Hey everyone, this is Julia with episode number 77 of the Mixology Talk podcast. From time to time, we'll find that key ingredients behind the bar become very, very difficult to come by. We've seen this happen a couple of times over the last 10 years, and it can be a really big problem for folks behind the bar. So this week, we thought we would talk a little bit about bar shortages, what we've seen, what we've done, and some ideas for dealing with them in the future. So let's get into it. So probably the earliest shortage that I've heard of in my sort of tenure in the industry was way back in 2009 when there was a serious shortage of Angostura bitters.
Yeah, and it was really hard to get any, and
it's hard to imagine an ingredient that would be worse to be short on.
Right, and this is right in a boom when craft cocktails and people really started to understand how to utilize bitters in cocktails.
But it was also before the boom in new bitters brands, right?
Right.
I mean, that was really just the maybe it triggered it.
There weren't a lot of other brands out there. There was a handful. But yeah, it was really, really challenging. And I remember going from store to store to store trying to find Angostura bitters, and I just couldn't find it. And the funny thing is, most of you will know, like a bottle of Angostura lasts a really long time. So when you finally go out and you run out of it, then all of a sudden you have nothing left.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how long it lasted, but I know it got me by surprise for sure when I was behind the bar.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just being without Angostura bitters, that would be a serious problem. So many recipes rely on it. And especially back in 2009, like you said, it was kind of the Renaissance era. It was maybe a couple years into the Renaissance, but definitely before this crazy boom of new bitters brands that we've seen recently. And I'm sure prices sort of went up accordingly with the other brands too.
Yeah. So that was a really interesting time. You could find the Angostura orange bitters on the market, but
that's because it wasn't used as frequently.
Right, yeah. And
it's because you didn't need it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting the orange bitters to work with.
Definitely not interchangeable.
No, definitely not interchangeable.
Very good, not interchangeable.
Right. So, yeah, it was an interesting shortage that ran out in 2009.
So do you know what caused it?
There was a lot of rumors. Like, with all shortages or hype shortages, there's always a good story. So the stories that I heard was that there were trade embargoes, that the president of the company or the president of the country was basically didn't trade with anybody. So then the supply dried up, and then something else happened. And
that's Trinidad, right?
And then finally Angostura bitters started flowing again. But I started digging around a little bit, and the story that was reported on the news was actually that the House of Angostura and the supplier of their bottles had a disagreement, and that's what caused the shortage. So there was plenty of bitters, and you can get it, but you couldn't put it in a bottle.
Couldn't get the bottle.
Right, exactly.
And it's not that unique of a bottle. I'm surprised that they couldn't find another. Well, I'm sure I don't know anything about this, but
well, this kind of brings up another really cool point about Angostura bitters. And when you get the smaller bottles, they have the label that reaches up above the top.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that happened a long time ago. And a story of it is that I think it was two brothers own the company. One of them ordered the wrong size label and didn't communicate it to the rest of the workers. And they just started slapping these wrong size bottles on, and it's continued ever since.
It's very. I mean, it is
quintessentially
Angostura. It is so quintessentially Angostura, yeah.
But that's the story that I heard, and the thing I love about this industry is one of the many things is the great stories that come out.
The rumors,
right? So that was one of the rumors I heard about Angostura.
So how'd you end up dealing with it?
So the first thing we did was started taking a look around for competitors. And this is when I got exposed to a couple other brands out there. I believe Fee Brothers was the one that I started working with because there was not, like you mentioned earlier, there weren't a lot of other bitter companies out there.
And they've been around a while.
Bitters. I believe they've been around for quite a bit. But I basically looked around for anything I can get my hands on that would be a good substitute for Angostura bitters at the time. And there wasn't a lot.
Just made it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the next one that kind of really got me by surprise, and many of you will remember this, and it often gets brought up around Cinco de Mayo time.
Yep.
And that is the Limepocalypse.
Yes, the Limepocalypse. And it's funny, you say this word to anybody in this industry and they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's
2014.
Yeah.
The year of the $1.50 lime.
Oh, it was incredible, man. So, like, limes have traditionally been super cheap, very reasonable. And, I mean, you go to the store and you get 3 for $1 or 10 for $1. whatever the price is. They're really reasonable. Typically, when you buy them by the case, they're about $20 to $30, depending on time of year and all that stuff, availability. Yeah, for an entire case of them. But in 2014, the price went up to well over $100 a case. So when you started pricing out your limes, they easily went over $1 a lime. And this was right around Cinco de Mayo time. So there was a huge demand for it. There was no supply in the market. And the supply that was out there was terrible.
And expensive.
They were the worst limes I've ever even attempted to use.
I don't consider produce to be memorable. It's not usually something that I like dedicate part of my memory to. I remember how terrible those limes were.
Oh my god!
They were mealy. They were dry.
They were super. They were like trying to squeeze rocks.
There was
little
nothing
green
there.
Rocks.
Yeah, it was terrible. And when we looked into this one, I mean, God knows we heard lots and lots of rumors, but what we believe caused this shortage was really just an issue with the drug cartels in Mexico threatening farmers, wanting more money from them, seizing trucks, that kind of thing. As a result, there was kind of a ripple effect. The reduction in the supply resulted in increased prices for limes. And then the result of that was that farmers began to pick all the limes off the trees even before they were necessarily ready because the prices were so high. And then the result is, you get maybe a little bit more supply, but they were just awful.
Right. So they were just trying to cash in, and I can't blame them.
Can't blame them.
But yeah, it was kind of a big deal. And the backstory behind it, it's like something out of Hollywood. Drug cartel coming in, seizing trucks, and threatening families and stuff. It was pretty intense. And my understanding is, and this is the rumor that I heard, was also that kind of a freak storm came through there right when the flowers in the lime trees were starting to set, and it knocked off a huge amount of the flowers. So the production already was super low. So all these things accumulated up and became the imperfect storm that was Limepocalypse.
That sounds like the kind of rumor that you would hear from a government that didn't want you to think they had a drug cartel problem.
Right, yeah.
Just saying. I don't know anything.
Absolutely.
Hashtag just saying.
So this kind of brings us to the next one, and this is something that I just recently found out about. I was going through the bartender subreddit, which I do from time to time, and it seems like there's another shortage kind of happening now in certain parts of the country around Rose's lime juice, of all things.
And that's an ingredient that's pretty, I won't say quite ubiquitous, but it's pretty frequently used. And there's some recipes that call for it almost exclusively.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Like a gimlet is specifically using Rose's lime juice. But yes, that's currently going on right now. And I don't know. I think it was
it's not something you use behind your
Eastern
bar.
Seaboard.
Yeah.
Not so much, but it is something that a lot of places are going to have to deal with on how they do that. Now, this kind of brings up another really good point, and this is kind of some of the things that we've seen in the past with Angostura bitters in particular and Limepocalypse is a lot of these things, especially when it comes to craft bars, you have the ability to make. Like lime cordial is something that you can absolutely make in-house.
Right.
And there's tons of recipes online that you can find it. So this could be a good substitute for Rose's lime juice. And this may kind of get people in the door for, all right, now that I know how to make this, maybe I can have some fun and try some other things. And next thing you know, you're on your way to a craft bar.
It's a dangerous road.
Yeah, it is.
It's a slippery slope.
And listening to a silly podcast like this.
Yes.
Sorry.
Can't help you. It's true, though. I mean, certainly Angostura bitters is going to be pretty hard to replicate with your own bitters program. But if it gets you experimenting, I say, hey, that's great.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Growing your own limes, probably a little bit more of a longer term solution.
Yeah, and one of the things that was happening there is people, including myself, really started to mess around with citric acids and chemicals and other types of acidifiers in cocktails, trying to kind of replicate it and substitute it through that way. But
I think we actually did a video or article about that.
We did a long time ago, yeah, with citric acid.
I'll have to look that up. If we did, I'll definitely include a link in the show notes, which I suppose would be mixologytalk.com/77.
Yeah, so there's always a way to deal with it. Sometimes you have to get a little bit more creative than others. I know in Limepocalypse, a lot of people were altering the recipes and trying to go with lemons versus limes.
Well, you would have to just because of the quality of the limes.
Well, that too. Well, people were still buying pasteurized lime juice, which was a good substitute.
I'm sure the prices went up for that, though, too.
It did, yeah, it definitely did. and then, try to alter the recipes accordingly. And
well, and adjust your menu. I mean, if you're looking at a menu and it's the start of the lime apocalypse and you've got 50-50 lime and lemon cocktails, adjust your menu.
That's what I had to do. I had to pull all of my lime cocktails off the menu.
Yeah.
And switch them over to a different style and everything. And it wasn't easy because it was like, it happened very
happened
quickly.
Overnight, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But changing your menu is something you can do a lot more quickly than just put up with the price increases,
Right.
I say.
Yeah. And I remember there were a couple bars that were actually charging people for limes for their gin and tonics.
I kind of get
I
it.
kind of get it, but
Kind of stinks.
Kind of stinks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially because from a customer's perspective, they probably don't know about the lime apocalypse.
Right, and it almost sounds like a joke, really.
It
like,
really
come
does.
on, really?
Yeah, well, I mean, they might see in grocery stores that limes are kind of expensive, but they may not know the degree to which it hits our industry. So suddenly you're charging them for a lime, and then it shows up and it's awful. It's not a good experience.
Yeah, and it was actually hitting taquerias, too.
Oh, I could see that.
I remember that.
I could definitely see that.
The dark days of 2014.
It was rough. No, it's true though. I think there's definitely some things that you can do with your menu. If you're a taqueria, then you're gonna have some trouble probably swapping out your menu. But there are some things that you can definitely do.
Yeah. So along these lines, there are these shortages which has happened as a result of either weather or trade embargoes or whatever it is, drug cartels. But there are also other shortages in our industry that we have to deal with. Most famously is the Pappy Van Winkle. Every time they launch, everyone is allocated a certain amount, and it's kind of silly, but it is a thing that we have to deal with. And this happens with a lot of other spirits too.
But I'm sure it happens. I know you've mentioned it happens quite a bit with more of the local style of breweries.
Yeah.
And it's simply a production issue. Somebody gets known for a great brew, and every restaurant in the San Francisco Bay Area wants a keg, and it's just not realistic.
Well, yeah, this happened with Russian River, definitely. They went up to production. They couldn't make any more beer because they were just out of physical space. So they were pulled back a lot, and this was quite a while ago, but it's still happening now. I know when we were going through a big revitalization of classic cocktails, rye whiskey was almost impossible to get your hands on.
It's kind of hard to imagine that now.
Right. And it's funny because rye whiskey had this really terrible connotation. It was kind of like an old man's drink, and it was just kind of hard, and people didn't really understand it. And then it started becoming very popular very quickly, and there was just simply no supply out in the market.
It's not exactly something you can make overnight.
Right, exactly. It takes a couple of years to get a good rye out the door, and there was just nothing out in the market. So, like, when I was a buyer, I was jumping from rye to rye to rye, grabbing whatever I could buy at the time. I think this was about 2011, 2012, something like that. But yeah, it was kind of a real problem. And then all of a sudden, Bullet Rye came on the market. Not sure how they got up to production, but they kind of,
they snuck right in there.
Well, yeah. And they kind of supplied the market when there was no other rye on them out there, and they've been very successful ever since. It's a great product. In my opinion, anyways. So there are a couple of ways around stuff like that, too. Like, I was talking to one of my reps at the time about this rye shortage. I'm like, how do I get around this? And he said, well, there's not really any way around it unless you buy a barrel. So if this happens to us, again, with any particular spirit that is being barrel aged, because that's typically what the production holdup is just maturation time. You may want to ask your rep about buying in barrel, because you're guaranteed a very large amount that you can go through over time.
And this probably makes more sense for your higher volume bars, I would imagine.
Sure, yeah.
If you don't want a barrel you're going to be sitting on for 3 years. But on the other hand, it is an insurance policy.
Right, absolutely. And you would have allocations of it, or you would always get that supply. And typically what happens is you talk to the vendor and say, hey, I can't take 250 cases or whatever that is right now. And typically what they'll do is they'll actually store it for you and then just ship it to you as your rye or your
so you
bourbon.
Don't have a barrel in your back room?
You don't have... You get the barrel.
You get to keep the barrel?
You get to keep the barrel.
But they do bottle it for you.
They'll bottle it for you.
I think it's actually law.
You have to do that. You can't just ship them a barrel.
I was wondering, how do you do inventory on a barrel?
Right.
Do you have to weigh it?
No, they ship it to you in bottles and all that. But they'll hold it in their warehouse, depending on the state, I'm
But
sure.
From their perspective, you've purchased it.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest deal is you have to come up with a lot of
cash.
Money.
Absolutely.
$7,000, $8,000, depending on the spirit. But that is one way around it. And also, this kind of gives you a good standing when there are really highly allocated products like Pappy Van Winkle. I don't remember what their bourbon is, but if you get into their bourbon barrel program, your allocation of these, from my understanding of Pappy Van Winkle, goes up, and all that kind of stuff.
And is that something you can really just sort of rely on your rep for? Is just to understand what those relationships are? Okay, how do I get in good graces with you guys so that I can have that allocation?
That's a really good question. And this is something that takes some buyers a good amount of time to figure it out, because usually there's a lot of animosity between a buyer and liquor salespeople. But it is a really good relationship to develop with them, because they have the answers. They know how to navigate the system, and
they'll fight for you.
They will.
If
if
they
you
like
treat them
you.
well, and there's no reason not to. They're just trying to do their job as well. But ask them, like, hey, this is my goal. This is what I'm trying to do. I could really use a higher allocation of this product. How do we do that?
How do we make that happen?
And they'll give you all the levers to pull, and it's up to you if you want to do that or not. But really get to know your rep, develop that relationship, and just open up the conversation of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a relationship with your rep and it's really just a transactional, the proverbial checkout stand at the grocery store, you're missing out.
You're going to miss a lot of opportunities.
There's huge opportunity to have that conversation and get their perspective. They know a lot about the other side that we don't.
And they'll give you a heads up. Like, for a lot of these shortages, my rep told me before it ever happened, so that way I could kind of position myself, stock up a little bit more, and then I wouldn't hit me as hard as everybody else. It would still catch up to me, but I had the opportunity to kind of get ahead of that shortage. So, like I said, get to know them, give them and they'll give you a heads up when stuff like this is about to happen. So.
Absolutely. And just goes back to the thing that we always say, which is just that relationships are so important in this industry.
Truly are.
Yeah. Broken record, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the long term, I think we've covered short-term solutions, look for competitors' products, increase the price of your affected menu items if necessary. Buy in bulk.
Change the menu if you have to.
Or change the menu, absolutely. But in terms of long-term solutions, there are some other things that you can think about. Absolutely, I would say building a relationship with your rep is a great sort of insurance policy for this sort of thing. We talked a little bit about making your own ingredients for things that apply, like bitters and
lime cordial.
Lime cordial, exactly. But in the true long term, the market's going to compensate. I mean, that's what we've seen with limes. I can go to the grocery store today. I want to say they were 15 cents each. The consumer pricing. So we are well past the apocalypse, the lime apocalypse. And prices will level out. Especially when you see these crazy price peaks. There's a lot of incentive for other people to get into a market. It can, with the Angostura shortage, I don't know if that was the sort of seed of the sort of bitters revolution or if it was just one more factor, but there are so many great brands of bitters out there now. And if there were a shortage today, I think that folks would frankly be a lot better off.
Yeah, they'd figure it out real quick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the good news, is that the market will compensate in the long term. The trick is really just surviving the short.
Yeah. And being good to your customers, because, just they're paying your bills. They're going to ride the wave through, when things are good and bad. Just be good to them. Don't try and, pass everything on to them. There's certain things that we just got to kind of accept as an
Well, and this might actually be a good opportunity for, especially for folks you have a relationship with, like your regulars. If somebody walks in and they always order a product that is affected by your shortage, it may be an opportunity to say, look, I got to level with you. We are really struggling to get that product. What about this?
Yeah.
Can I suggest this?
Right.
It's an opportunity to get people outside of their proverbial comfort zone and to get you outside your comfort zone. Try something new. Learn something new. Have you ever made a cocktail with pomelo? We have. It was only like 2 weeks ago, though, so I can't get too excited. It was really good. But these sorts of things are an opportunity. They do throw us out of our routine, but that's not all bad.
Yeah, I was trying to think of if there was a shortage on any one thing behind the bar. And what would it be? Like, what would terrify me the most to run out of?
Water.
Definitely ice. Yeah, and that happens every Friday night, but that's a different story.
We're in California, so if there's a real, granted there is a drought, but if the drought ever actually hits the taps and there's no water coming out, then I think doors close.
Yeah, I'm thinking like mint or ginger beer right now.
What are you talking about? I'm pretty sure every bar is always out of mint when I go and order my drinks.
Right. But yeah, I think if ginger beer dried up right now,
that would be tough.
That would be hard. Yeah, ginger beer.
We make a decent ginger beer though.
Bartender's ketchup right now.
It's true. It's true.
Definitely go out and have fun. If we have a shortage coming up in the future,
let us know.
So if there is a shortage in the future, definitely try and experiment, try and find other products out there that can compensate for it. If there's something that you can make in-house, it may take a little bit of time, but it is developing a skill set as well. But I think that the moral of the story is keep your head down. It'll pass. Develop a relationship with your reps, and they'll give you a heads up.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get through it for sure. And I would love to hear your stories. For anybody who's been in the industry for any amount of time, I'm sure you've seen at least these shortage and probably many, many more. And I would love to hear how you dealt with it behind the bar.
Actually, what I would love to hear about, because these are all, I'm sure, shortages that all of us, many of us had to deal with. But I'm sure the stories that we've all heard about the same shortages are very, very different.
Yeah. Did you hear different rumors about the cause of the Angostura shortage?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear those.
Or any of these.
We're total bar gossips.
I know,
right?
Seriously. Yeah. And then Becky said.
I know. Oh my gosh. I can't believe she said that.
I know, seriously. But we'd love to hear those stories as well.
Definitely let us know over in the comments at mixologytalk.com/77. So with a bit of luck, we won't see any big shortages this year, and the rose and slime juice will come back soon enough. But otherwise, have some fun with it. Experiment. I think that there's a great opportunity here for us to learn something new.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great shift, and cheers.
Cheers.
Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.